Luke noisily took in a lungful of air. He rose to his feet. His head still ached and the air was still noisy and greedy in his lungs. Luke leaned over his wife. Again the scream, "Kill!" He screamed like an animal, a cry of pain, despair, and triumph. Before he knew it, his hands were around his wife's neck. He stared at her, staring into her beautiful face, into the bottomless big eyes. They were full of terror. The girl tried to scratch his face, but she couldn't. She was completely helpless. Luke looked at her and clenched his hands tighter and tighter. Gradually, she began to calm down, and the less she twitched, the weaker the headache got, the lighter he felt. He squeezed his hands tighter and tighter as he watched the life drain from her once beloved eyes. With her last strength, the girl managed to hit her husband in the groin with her knee. The sharp pain, the blurring in his eyes again, the grip loosened. She ripped his arms off her neck and pushed him off the bed. The life-saving air entered his lungs, causing a violent coughing fit. Continuing to cough and expectorate blood, she crawled off the bed and, holding onto his neck in a half-bent, swaying position, ran to the phone, grabbed the receiver and moved toward the front door, dialing 911 on the way. A man answered the phone. Without waiting for any rejoinder, she screamed, just screamed. A hard shove to her back threw her against the wall, the phone flying aside. Luke grabbed her by the hair and started slamming her face against the corner of the wall, then threw her to the floor. She was crying bloody tears, her nose was smashed, her eyebrows split, her teeth knocked out, her upper lip half torn off, her eye bloodshot. He kicked her in the face. The blood stirred his mind. He became uncontrollable. The lust engulfed him more and more. The guy no longer thought about the fact that his wife was in front of him. No, now in front of him was a piece of meat, raw, bloody meat. He kicked her in the stomach, then another and another, again in the face. The girl had no time to cover herself, her beautiful body wriggling from the powerful blows, her face a bloody mess, her hair sticking up. She just lay there, moaning and crying as Luke worked her legs. After a while, he stopped and walked away. The girl, with a tremendous effort, leaning on the floor with one hand, the other hand holding onto the windowsill, pulled herself up against the wall and leaned her back on it. She sat down with her legs stretched out. She wasn't crying anymore. Her eyes were staring nowhere, as if she was looking through the wall. She wasn't even thinking about what was going on. There were no thoughts in her head, and there was a surprising calmness in her soul. She heard footsteps approaching. The girl opened her eyes. Her husband stood in front of her, holding a large kitchen knife. He squatted down, lifted her chin with the blade, and looked into her eyes. There was not a drop of fear or terror in them. Not anger, not despair, not lust for life. Nothing, complete indifference. How? What happened? Frantically stammering, he spoke. Where is the fear? Where is the pain? Why don't you feel anything? He was already shouting at her. Wake up, you bitch. I have to see you die. The girl lifted her chin, leaned forward a little, and spat in her husband's face. It was a complete surprise. Viscous, bloody liquid slowly ran down his cheek. Fool, he hissed. The girl smiled, or rather made a pathetic semblance of a smile, which finally pissed him off. Luke struck her with a swinging blow, and she fell. Die, you bitch, he shouted as he plunged the knife into her neck, then flipped her over onto her back, the same pathetic smile shining on her face. He screamed and pulled the knife out and began to bring it down on the still beautiful body. He struck blow after blow. Blood flooded the floor, splattering him from head to toe. The same sweet, bloody smile shone on the dead girl's face. With each blow, he began to cry harder and harder, tears streaming down his cheeks, mixing with the blood and dripping onto the chopped-up body of his wife, his beautiful wife, the one he loved so much. The next blow struck him in the heart. Luke woke up in a cold sweat, with a mute scream on his lips. He was in his apartment, in his bed, and his wife was lying beside him, quietly breathing. The moonlight was falling on her naked body, giving it a delicate, mysterious glow. His heart pounded frantically in his chest. He lay back in bed, kissed her neck, hugged her gently and buried his face in her lush hair. Tears flowed slowly and silently from her eyes. "What's wrong, my love?" Her gentle, native voice sounded better than any music in the silence of the night. "It's all right, my little one. Sleep well." "I love you." The girl moved closer to her husband. He hugged her even tighter. "It's all right. It's just a dream. Just a bad dream," he whispered. Luke was almost asleep when a voice came from somewhere in the darkness. "Kill." And the sharp flash of pain in his head was repeated again. Oh, how beautiful she is, how lovely that girl I saw yesterday. Blue eyes the color of the sky, rosy cheeks, angelic smile, sweet face. I fell in love. I fell in love with her at first sight. Her smile, I'll never forget. Oh my God, is it her again? Yes, it is. A beautiful girl is coming towards me. How my body trembles, how my heart pounds. She's looking at me. "Hello, what's your name?" Suddenly the girl asked me and sat down on the bench next to me. "Alex," I answered, stammering. "Why are you so scared? Did I scare you?" "Not at all. I was just..." She looked at me and seemed to penetrate me with her gaze. "You're so beautiful." I know," she said, without even lowering her eyes. The conversation started, and I found out that she was exactly the same age as me, 17. I also learned that her name was Mary Ann, but she just let me call myself either Marie or Anne. I decided I would call her Marie. Also, she has no father or mother, just an old grandmother who's about to die. I felt very sorry for Marie and promised that I would always be with her. We spent a month together. I fell in love with her and she fell in love with me. We started seeing each other. I loved her so much I was planning a wedding as soon as I turned 18. We went everywhere together. Everything seemed fine, but it wasn't for long. 1907-2012 she died. Just like that, she died. Together with my grandmother on the same day. I found out about it only 2 days after her death, from acquaintances. At first I didn't believe it and called her non-stop, calling her. I called because I couldn't believe she was gone. Eventually I accepted it. For a year, I didn't eat or drink much. By 2013, I had lost a lot of weight. My mum began to worry about me, and her heart was sick. For her sake, I began to pretend that I'm a normal, simple guy as before, that everything is fine. But it was just an act. On the anniversary of Marie's death, I went to the cemetery. I went to the grave and cried for a long time. It made me feel much better. Beautiful. It came from behind me. I turned around. There was a girl standing there. She looked so much like Marie that at first I thought it was her and got scared. But it wasn't her. It was Victoria. "I'm sorry about your girlfriend, Alex. So young and beautiful. What did she die of?" "I don't know," I said with my head down. "She just took it, and she died. I promised I'd always be with her." You don't have to promise. She might remind you of your promise after all." "She's dead," I answered. Victoria smirked. "The dead remember too. At first I thought she was out of her mind." I grinned and went home. But Victoria was right. A month later, I dreamt of Marie. It was so real that I even believed it. "Marie, it's so good to see you." I rushed to hug her, but she stopped me. "You promised you'd always be with me." "Yes, but I didn't know you were going to die," I answered quietly. "But you can die too, and we'll be together. You just don't love me." "I do. I love you very much. But dying isn't so easy." I said, "I can help you." She answered and handed me a rope. "What? You're going to kill me?" "You promised?" she said and cried. "I don't want to die," I shouted. "You don't love me?" She had a knife in her hand and swung it at me, and I cried out, and I woke up in a cold sweat. I still had that phrase ringing in my ears. "You don't love me." It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't get the dream out of my head, but it was just a dream. But the dream kept repeating itself, and every time she kept saying the same thing, "You don't love me. You promised." Each time she offered me new ways to die: throw myself in front of a car, hang myself, jump out of a window, slit my wrists. When I refused, she started crying, said I didn't love her, and tried to kill me herself. I'd wake up. Each time I got more and more scared. What if the next time I didn't wake up? The 15th day after that dream, I woke up in the hospital. Turns out I'd hanged myself. My mum didn't go to work. She woke up and went to my room. The door was open. She saw me wobbling on a rope by the window and took me down. Luckily, I was still alive. But how? I was asleep. I decided to tell my friend, but of course he didn't believe me. My mum didn't believe it either. She was so scared for me that she had to call an ambulance herself. My friend said I'd lost my mind after Marie died. I finally decided to end it. I was sick of having these dreams. I took a knife and ran the blade through my veins. I felt pain. My eyes blurred. I lost consciousness and white light. In the middle of all that white light, Marie was sitting there crying. "Well, here I am, coming to you," I said and hugged her. "I'm sorry. I'm so selfish. I died, and now I'm dragging you down with me. I mean, you've got so much more to live for, Alex." "What are you talking about? You're the one who wanted me to be with you." She took my cheeks. "You'll live," she kissed me. Then I felt my heart beating. I was flying somewhere so fast it took my breath away. I could still see her. She was standing there smiling. As she started to fade away, she waved her hand and said, "Just don't forget me." Next thing I knew, I woke up, but not on the floor where I slit my wrists or in the hospital like I expected, but in my bed. And now I wonder if it was a dream. After all, everything else was true, and the hospital and the way my mom was going through these dreams, and Victoria. At the time of the incident, I was 25 years old. I had plenty of friends at the time. I was a liberated, good-looking and sociable guy. But unfortunately, I did not have a permanent girlfriend, except for those with whom I could spend one night and then forget the next day. One evening when I was coming home from work, thinking about my own, a girl was walking towards me. You know, ordinary, long black hair, typical facial features, slim, about 20 years old. I don't know what made me go up to her and meet her, because she wasn't even my type. She, in her turn, didn't mind, introduced herself as Angela. We got to talking. Angela turned out to be very friendly and cheerful, and so we partied all evening and all night. Every day we met in the evening and talked, spent time together in cafes, movies, and after a month I decided to offer her to become my girlfriend, and she agreed, which I was infinitely glad. When our relationship was a year old, we started living together. I was over the moon about her and didn't look for any flaws, but as soon as she moved in, I started to notice a lot of strange things about her. She would often sit down next to me, stare at me with crazy eyes, and then look up at me and smile strangely. When I asked her why she was looking at me so strangely, it was as if she would come to her senses, change her expression abruptly, and go into the other room as if nothing had happened. Every time I asked her where she worked, where she came from, who her parents were, she would just walk away from the answer. But at that moment, I didn't pay much attention to her strange behavior. I took it for granted. I thought that all of us people are different. Everyone behaves differently. Later, Angela started bringing home all sorts of crap, some dried herbs, incomprehensible water. She said she needed it for work, and I didn't dare object. And one night I woke up because I felt her eyes on me. She was sitting on the bed and looking at me with mad eyes. I even trembled with fear, and she just fell on the bed and fell asleep. And what surprised me most of all was that she never ate with me, never ate any food in my presence. I repeatedly asked her why you don't eat anything. and she smiles, giggles, and says she is embarrassed to eat in front of me, and supposedly does it when I can't see. And I've been a fool to fall for it and put up with it. The final straw was a recent incident. I woke up in the middle of the night and didn't find Angela next to me. I thought, okay, she must have gone to the bathroom, but I went to the kitchen for a drink of water. I passed by the living room and I heard my beloved's voice. I opened the door, and from what I saw, I was stunned. At the mirror stands Angela, and in the reflection is not her, and in the reflection is not she and some other person, and they are talking to each other in an incomprehensible language. I was speechless, slammed the door and ran to the kitchen to get water. I stood there drinking, thinking about what I had seen. I think, it cannot be. It is me in the dark dreamed, and she may be talking to herself then. Anything can be. In general, I tried hard to convince myself that I imagined it, but I realized that I saw it all with my own eyes, and I could not have imagined it. When I turned back around, I was startled. She was sitting at the table and looking at me again, smiling. I didn't hesitate and said, "Who are you talking to in the living room?" "Ah, yes, it was me with my mom on the phone, don't worry. It's nothing. Why are you up? Let's go to bed." Well, I had to go back to bed with her even though I didn't want to, because I couldn't refuse her in case she got angry. I will not hide it. I was very afraid of her at that moment. After that, I couldn't sleep for a long time. I had nightmares in which my beloved was sitting on human remains, happy and calling me to her. In the evening, coming from work, I decided that it's time to put an end to our relationship. Order bored her strangeness. I told her that, tired of the relationship and my feelings for her no longer. She got very angry and began to yell at me, calling me names, threatening me, cursing me, and in the process of collecting her things, after half an hour she calmed down and left, and the last thing she said was, "You'll be sorry." "Yeah, I will," I grinned at the time. The important thing for me was that she was gone. I was much more comfortable without her. In the middle of the night, I woke up to someone calling persistently at my apartment. I got angry. I thought it was another schoolyard bully. I looked through the peephole, and there was this crazy woman standing there looking at me as if she could see through the door, not blinking, smiling and calling. Crazy fool, I thought, and went back to bed, and the calls immediately stopped. I slept restlessly, had nightmares with her again, and in the morning I woke up as if I hadn't slept at all but had been carrying bags all night. As the months went by, I still slept badly. I still looked bad. I was more tired than usual, but I was glad that Angela didn't come at night anymore. Later, I met my co-worker Olivia, the new girl in our office. Blonde, legs from the ears, slim, all beautiful in general. She was my type. Of course I liked her. I took her to restaurants for a week. Then I invited her to my house, I think you know what for, and she was not against it. When everything was ready and we were about to start the important business, the doorbell rang. I reluctantly went over, looked through the peephole, and there was this crazy woman standing there yelling again, "I know you're with someone else. Let her go. You and I are in the past. Go to bed. It's night time. Stop coming to me," I replied. "You'll regret it," she shouted and left. Olivia and I did our thing and went to bed. As usual, I woke up in the middle of the night. Olivia wasn't in bed for some reason. There were strange noises coming from the living room. I quietly crept over to the door that led to that very living room and clearly heard slurping noises. I immediately swung the door open, and I wish I hadn't, honestly. What followed was this picture. Angela squatting, with the back of her head turned toward me, eating Olivia's body. There's no way to describe the feelings I was experiencing at that moment. I was in a daze. I didn't know what to do, and I had forgotten my native language, but I managed to mumble something. What are you doing, you bastard? Let her go." Angela slowly turned to me, and instead of her face, I saw an old, flabby, ugly face that hardly looked human. And in that face, I recognized the one I'd seen in my reflection when I'd caught Angela standing in the mirror. It spoke in a non-human voice. I told you you'd be sorry. I slammed the door and ran to my room, put on my pants. I thought I would have time to run out of the apartment. But no, this thing had already come to my room and almost jumped on me, but I was not confused and jumped out of the window. It's good that I live on the second floor. When I jumped out, I didn't even feel any pain. I ran like a scalded man to wherever I was going. I ran and was afraid to turn around, afraid that this thing was running after me. When I ran very far away, I came to my senses and went to my friend, always looking back. He was very surprised to see me in the middle of the night in my pants and with eyes like a saucer. Then I filed a report with the police. There was a lot of fuss and proceedings. They said they couldn't find the person responsible for Olivia's death, and they threw up their hands. I just dropped the story and moved to another city. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't left her then. Maybe that thing would have eaten me too. Hell if I know. Surprisingly, it never bothered me or came back. Only occasionally in my dreams it called me to its place, a huge pile of human remains. It was a warm summer evening. The date had gone well and Simon was walking her home, dreaming of a future together with his new girlfriend. She was one of the prettiest girls in town, and so many guys were courting her, and many girls were jealous of her. They said goodbye, and Simon left. The next day he went to her house and found out that Liz had died the night before, raped, robbed and murdered. Liz's father blamed it on the guy and sent him away. Simon couldn't come to his senses for a long time and started to drink a lot. Once he came to Liz's grave, sat there for a long time, talking to her, crying, and blaming himself for not staying with her that night. A girl came to the grave next door, crying and talking to whoever was buried there. Simon approached her, and they talked and went home together. When they parted, Simon went home and went to bed. He had a dream that he was sitting in the kitchen, and Liz came to him and told him to kill Anna, a girl he met at the cemetery. Simon refused. Then the dead woman said, "If you don't kill her, then I'll take you." The morning after, he called Anna for a walk in the park and slit her throat. A few days later, the police got hot on the guy's trail, and when they entered his house, he was sitting in the corner scratching the words, "I'm willing to do anything you say, just don't touch me," on the wall with the knife he used to kill Anna. Simon was taken to a mental hospital. He is still there. Simon does not go to bed on his own. He is afraid that Liz will come to him again. The doctors have to forcefully inject him with sleeping pills. He killed Anna to save his life, but what kind of life did he get in return?